infinite complacency, people went to and fro over the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
Welcome to another episode of Into the Fray. If you're new here, I hope you're enjoying it enough to head to your podcatcher of choice to rate and review the show. This helps it aggregate across the listening platforms, which will turn into more people willing to come on and share their encounters. If you've been listening for years, I'd ask that you please do the same. Home base for Into the Fray is intothefrayradio.com. There you will find all episodes, blog posts, and get bonus content info. Speaking of that bonus content, on top of the free weekly show, I also produce bonus content for Patreon and Apple Podcasts Premium. On either platform, you get all bonus audio episodes and early releases, each one ad-free, of course. Full disclosure, though, Patreon has a bit more in the way of perks because of their interface. Over there, you will get video versions of patron-only chats, the private Discord channel, and merch at certain pledge levels. So head to patreon.com/intothefray or your Apple Podcatcher app to sign up for bonus content today. You can find me on the big three social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The Linktree link in each of my bios will take you to all the places you want to venture regarding ITF, including Small Town Monsters documentaries, various ways to listen to the show, Beyond the Fray books, contact info for me, and more. And lastly, and really honestly most importantly, if you'd like to share your encounter or encounters on Into the Fray, the best way to get in touch is by emailing me at shannon@intothefrayradio.com. And without further ado, let's get to the interview. So on this episode of Into the Fray, I welcome Jeffrey on with me, and he has several different experiences that cover several different subjects. So Jeffrey, thank you so much for coming on the show.
No problem. Glad to be here.
Now, I know that right now you are located in the great state of Texas, but did most of your experiences happen in the same place? I don't really know where you wanted to start with your experiences, be it chronologically or just wherever you wanted
Definitely
to start.
In Texas, for sure. There was a time when I was in Arkansas for a while, but I didn't experience anything there, which I guess I find weird because I hear that's a pretty active place in certain aspects.
Yeah, that is kind of weird in and of itself, isn't it? Because there is plenty of strangeness in Arkansas, but that said, plenty of strangeness in Texas as well. No Dogman stories for you yet, though, Jeffrey, in Texas, so that's good. Well, yeah, wherever you wanted to start with your experiences, Jeffrey, you can dive right in.
We try to stick to what I like to call subtopics, like say UFOs, paranormal, cryptid. I'll kind of stick it that way. Now, as far as UFOs, I would say I've had, say, 2 encounters. One when I was a child. My older brother was there. He's since passed on, unfortunately. One of them, he was there. We were out walking in our field one night, going to the house. Obviously, go inside, about to be time for bed and dinner. Well, he goes, "Hey, Jeff, look up." And I did. I see this thing, almost as if we're going around in circles. It was really high up in the sky. Almost, say, like a dog chasing its tail, kind of. Then it just stopped and then shut off real fast. And I'm talking lightning speed fast. This was high up in the air, too, almost as if it was, I want to say it looked like almost as if it could have been outside our atmosphere. That was the first thing. And the second time, this was, I believe I was 16 at the time. I can't remember how old I was when the first one happened. Well, with standing outside, I was waiting for a ride somewhere. It was honestly, it was during the transition from day to night. Some people might say, oh, it was a star, but I don't know about that because I saw this light just sitting there. It was kind of an angle between two trees. And I watched it for a while. I'm like, okay, I know it's getting close to night. Normally you start seeing stars around this time, but that was the only light that I saw. And during a certain amount of time before it gets fully dark, even though it's still somewhat daylight, you can see stars in the sky. You've probably seen this too, like stars in the sky before it gets fully night.
Right.
But that's not what was happening. And then I hear a noise behind me. I turn around, I'm like, what the heck was that? I didn't see nothing. Then I turn around, the light's gone. I'm like, okay, that's weird. And I look for it. Well, maybe it moved somewhere else. Maybe I would check there constantly every so often when I still lived at the place this happened. I never saw that light again. Now, as to what these could be, well, I mean, I think the explanations of what that could be are pretty self-explanatory. Maybe UFO, maybe I was hallucinating. Some people may say that. Whatever opinion you want to have, you're free to it. That's the way I look at it. But I just can tell you what I experienced. Now, did I have any like bad feelings or anything like that when I saw these events happen both times? No. Now, as to what these could be, back on that subject, maybe they were alien craft. Maybe they were at least the one in the sky close to nighttime. Maybe government. I mean, who knows? Especially with how they're claiming, oh, aliens are real now, all that stuff. Well, thanks. I think we already knew that. We knew you were covering it up, but whatever. Now, not too fantastical. I mean, other people have more fantastical stories that probably maybe actually happened, but that's just those experiences. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple.
Now, what did your brother say about that first sighting that you described?
Well, he didn't know it was either. His thought was, well, maybe it's UFO, maybe it's something whatnot. I mean, I don't remember everything he said too very well because I was a kid then, much younger than I am now. I think I might have been 7, maybe. So I was little. But I don't remember we mentioned to him or dad. He thought we were just horsing around or whatever. But I know what I saw, and I wasn't hallucinating because he saw the same thing. Now, there was a difference when I looked up. He swore that there were 2 of them. If memory serves me correctly. My guess is if there were 2, maybe the other one took off before I could look up and see that one too. So,
do you remember if he said, because he said he saw 2, so did he say that the other one was doing the same dog chasing its tail motion?
I think how he insinuated is maybe they were almost chasing each other or whatnot. Why they were doing it, and let's say it was something intelligent. Why I was doing that, I have no clue. I just remember the few things he did tell me that I can remember, and then what I saw. Maybe they were checking their systems to make sure everything was still working. Who knows what they were doing? Maybe they were doing it because they were drunk. I mean, who knows? I just know that when I looked up, there was only 1. Now, as I said before, maybe the second one took off before I could look up. But it was going around, then it just stopped and just took off. And when I say fast, I mean, think flash fast. That's probably about how fast it'd be. It didn't stick around long. And when I mean high up in the air, it looked as if it was amongst the stars. That's how high it looked up. I don't think it was in our atmosphere. So how we were able to see it, I don't know. So maybe it must have been putting off some hellacious light. Pardon my language. Sorry.
No, that's where I was going to go with that. I'm like thinking, I mean, they had to be really big, really bright, something going on there for you to see them if they're that high.
Being said, I will say this. Maybe because they were so high, maybe they were light outside our atmosphere, and that's why it looked like it was amongst the stars, which that'd be pretty close to being amongst the stars. And if that's the case, that would make sense. And obviously, these did not look like huge, giant stars or whatever. They were relatively small, but they were still noticeable. So maybe they were just right outside our atmosphere, and for whatever reason, maybe they were observing something. I mean, maybe they were monitoring. Who knows what they were doing? Nothing, like I said, nothing super outrageous. Nothing some people say is super spectacular. Kind of more mundane, I guess you can say. I wouldn't say there's one of the most interesting experiences I've ever had. Those will come in, well, when I get to them.
And I'm really sorry for the loss of your brother, Jeffrey.
Thanks. He passed in 2021. He would probably be more than happy to chime in on this and speak about what he saw, and he might be able to fill in some details that I don't have.
Right. How much older was he?
He was 41 when he passed, and I was 34 when he passed. So I want to say he was easily at least 5 years older than me, at least.
All right. So, I mean, to me, yes, those might be classified by some to be a little bit more of a tame. I won't use the word mundane because they were cool to you stories, but still of note nonetheless, right? At least strange. Yes, it could have, maybe it's our stuff. Maybe it's quote unquote their stuff. Who knows? But it's still worth mentioning. So, where are we going next, Jeffrey?
Well, I don't know. I go to what I might call paranormal experiences in nature. Now, I guess I'll say what I consider the most, I guess you could say profound because of how exactly it went down and what happened. Now, I'll start with the kind of light ones first. When we first moved from one house to another, we didn't move very far, like maybe half a mile to a mile away from where we were living. And kind of weird things started happening. Nothing too out there, just more like noises. One thing now, I'm going to preface this now. Most of my life, I've lived in what they might call a trailer house, manufactured home. Now, obviously, dogs can get under there, bump their head. I've experienced that myself, like hearing dogs just bump their head, just one little bump. That's not what I was hearing, though. And this would be usually when I'm by myself. I think one person was with me one other time. I would hear someone walking, like actual footsteps. And as someone who's lived in a trailer house or a manufactured home, I know what footsteps sound like. And I would hear the sound of footsteps as someone's walking when I was alone in the house. So when I would hear this, I'm like, okay, what's this? So I would go and literally search the entire house, sometimes twice, checking every area where someone could try and hide, just to make sure maybe someone got in. I'm not aware of it yet. I could not find anyone. I even searched one area. If they got there, they would have had to go by me, and I would have noticed them. Not to mention, they may not have been smart enough to shut the door because I shut the door to the room I was at. So there's no way you probably would have heard that open. I mean, I couldn't find anyone. Obviously, a little weird. And other times, I would hear like a loud crash. I know these are probably somewhat stereotypical stories people tell, but I would go to find it usually sounds like it comes from the kitchen, pots and pans, all that stuff. So I would go in there, nothing had moved. Everything was exactly where it was, which also thought that was a little weird. Now, I want to say, I was starting to say, now this did sometimes happen when someone was home. They may not have been inside the house though. But I was thinking now, with those times at least, about the loud crash, well, maybe someone's trying to play a prank on me. But it kept happening. It happened like, I want to say 2 or 3 times. But then it just stopped. I guess maybe it was looking for a certain reaction from me. I wasn't giving it to it. So it just stopped. I know the theory with paranormal, sometimes they want to make you scared or something. feed off your fear. I mean, I've been into paranormal stuff all my life. Bigfoot, paranormal aliens, you name it. I'm not a one-topic pony. So I'm willing to talk about it all because I have an interest in it. But back to that, then that kind of died down. Sometimes the footsteps thing would still happen, but the loud crashes, no, that didn't happen. Not again. After the third time, I think it was, maybe fourth. Now, this one gets a little more, people might say, creepy. Solid forms. I saw this one at least one time myself. Other people saw it also. My sister mentioned it. Some people who were staying at her house for a while at the time mentioned it. They mentioned a girl with brown hair in a white T-shirt. That's all they could see of her. And I saw that one time walk by my window. It was at nighttime, and my window was open, letting the cool air in. I didn't want to be sweltering my room. Wanted some fresh air too. So I'm sitting on my bed. I'm just sitting there, just chilling. I can't remember exactly what I was doing, but I think it was probably 9 or 10 at night. I see a girl with white T-shirt, brown hair go by, like the back of her walking away. So I jump up real quick, look out the window. I can't see no one. Now, I know with 100% positivity, there was no one out there, at least not solid, because the area she was walking, there was an old trailer, like a trailer you might haul tools around, stuff like that. It was right in her way, so she couldn't go that way. The only option she had was to keep going the way she was going. Now, there was stuff blocking the way, like the side of the road, because there was our driveway, and it's a driveway we pulled into beside her house. Now, that leaves the only other option she could have done was the driveway itself. Here's the problem. I know she didn't make it there because we had gravel driveway. Like it was nothing but gravel. I know what gravel sounds like when we walk on it too. So I was not hearing the of the gravel. So I know there's no way she made it there because I would have heard that. Doesn't matter if you're barefoot or what. Person will make sound on gravel. There's no question about that, unless there may be a baby. And this person was a lot bigger than a baby. Take that for what you will. I'm kind of leaning more toward maybe a spirit of some sort. What could have happened in that house? I don't know. I heard rumors. I'm not going to mention them because they're so vague. I don't think they're worth mentioning. But as to what it could have been, I believe it was a spirit of some sort. Why it's there, and what's its purpose, I can only guess.
Jeffrey, was she always seen outside the home, or was she ever seen inside?
She actually was seen inside the home. My sister saw her. She saw her first. She was going, I believe she said she was going into her room or coming out of her room. And she saw a girl with a white T-shirt, brown hair. I don't remember what she said. She was wearing, like, say, pants or a dress or anything like that. She obviously, you're looking straight up. You're probably not going to be paying attention to someone's shoes or pants. You're going to see their upper body and their face. Now, she didn't mention seeing a face, so maybe she saw her from behind as well, walking into the living room. And she went after her, but she wasn't there. Another odd one.
Yeah, that's really odd.
She told me this. She told my brother. I think she told my dad, but my dad wasn't he was a kind of dismissive of that kind of stuff, or at least originally. Maybe in his later years, he probably wasn't so much. He never saw anything like that. At least he never admitted to it. Maybe he saw something. But again, when you're that kind of person that kind of dismisses that sort of thing, you may not mention that. You may just, oh, it's nothing. Oh, it's just hogwash, all that stuff. And obviously, there are plenty of people like that out there. You know this, I know this. It has to be something where it metaphorically smacks them in the face big time for them to actually admit it. That's just how some people are.
Yeah, and even then, they may not talk about it.
That too.
So it sounds.
I think that may be because of the shock, which I something similar to that. I know I'm kind of straying off a little bit with the Sasquatch or I want to say Sasquatch specifically, but paranormal creatures in general. Now, this is directed completely towards Sasquatch. But again, I'll talk about that theory later. I mean, I can talk about theories about that stuff, but again, not the main topic. And now, this experience, he didn't necessarily see someone, but it was my brother. He was asleep on the chair, and I want to say he was coming out to wake up, but he felt like he couldn't breathe. And then he felt arms under his, like hands under his arms, lift him up enough to where he could breathe again. And he opened his eyes, no one was there. Now, obviously, if it's helping you be able to breathe, that's not a malicious thing. It's probably trying to help you, which obviously that's a good thing. You don't want nothing malicious. You want something benign in your house if you're going to deal with anything, right?
100%. And I wonder if it was the same spirit that people were seeing, if it was the girl.
It could have been. Now, the other people, they were at our house. They were in a room. They had the window open, and they saw the same thing. Now, I was outside, actually roughly in the same area where the window was open, not right at the area. And they asked me, did I see a girl with a white T-shirt and brown hair walk by? I told them no, I didn't see it. I don't recall seeing her. I mean, I was outside, but they saw that too. They just, again, same description, same, I guess you can say MO, just walking away. Like, well, maybe she's trying to make you aware of something, say someone's being watched, which that would be my theory. Because obviously, I'm going back to my experience. I was sitting in my room, windows open. Yeah, you can see outside your window clearly, but also people can see you. Maybe something was watching me she was wanting to make me aware of somehow in some way. I mean, at least in those instances, that could be the case. I can only speculate.
Did you have any neighbors around there?
Our closest neighbor, I want to say two. There were two houses in front of us, but no one lived in them. Now, our closest neighbor beside us, though, they had to have been at least a good couple 100 feet away. And not to mention also, between our houses and theirs, there was a big section of trees. It wasn't necessarily really wide, but if you were trying to go through the brush and the trees there, unless you were really slow and really careful, we would probably know about it. And not to mention, we had dogs outside this place too. I can tell you for a fact, dogs, you probably had dogs. When anyone's outside, they raise some cane. And our dogs were no different. So if someone was outside, they would raise holy heck. So usually that's one way we knew if someone was outside. They didn't react.
As far as you know, though, Jeffrey, nobody was able to interact with her, right? I mean, she didn't really look at anybody or interact with anyone.
I don't recall anyone saying she tried to speak to him, try to wave at him, nothing of that nature. It was almost always walking away. At least the girl in the T-shirt. It was always walking away from them.
Right.
Now, as to what was happening inside the house, that could be anybody's guess. Maybe there was something that she was trying to make my sister aware of. I can only speculate. And maybe I'm just reading into it. It's just she was walking by just to walk by. Say, hey, I'm here. I mean, I can't say firmly why she did that. Or I'm going to say she because it could have been anything.
Yeah. Well, that's the bummer of all these things, right? Is we won't know for sure.
Yeah, we can only make a wild guess. Now, what I consider the most profound experience for me, I was outside. It was nighttime. I want to say it was around 9, 10 p.m. I was walking around because I wanted to get outside. I wanted to walk around. Now, I will say this. This definitely isn't the smartest thing to do. I was walking outside barefoot. But also, obviously, one thing I'm going to mention, and the reason I'm mentioning this detail, it'll become important in a minute. I did have a knife on me with one of those with a sheath. Again, that detail will become important in a minute. But I'm walking around. It's night. The lights are on, so I can see pretty well. We had our porch light. We had a big light on a pole. They were at two different angles. One would have been in front of me, one behind, and they were both in a really, I want to say, 45-degree angle, somewhere in there. But I was walking back and forth. I had a habit of pacing. As I'm turning around, I can see my shadow from the light behind me, the pole light that's on a big pole, at an angle, as if I'm standing straight. It's, I want to say, 7 to 10 feet to my left. My shadow's there. Obviously, I know that's my shadow. That's not what worried me. What worried me is the thing that was roughly right in front of me that was not my shadow. Needless to say, this got my attention real quick. Now, what I saw, I want to say what you might call, I know you've heard of these things, the shadow people. I liken it to that because it had a human form. It appeared three-dimensional to me, but it was like a shadow. And when I saw this, my first thought was not ghost. My first thought was, oh, crap, someone's trespassing. Now, my dad had a lot of tools outside. He owned a lot of tools. He drove 18-wheelers for a living. So if it broke down, he wasn't sponsored by a company. He didn't work for a company. He worked for himself. So he had to fix it himself. Hence why he would have tools. And so obviously, I mentioned this because obviously this can make us a target for thieves. It goes without saying. And that was my first thought, that someone's out here to try and steal something, and I just caught him in the act. So the knife I had on me, I pulled that out. I was putting myself in a bit of a stance. I was ready to fight. Because again, I wasn't thinking this was a ghost. I was thinking this was a person. And then with a split second, after I pulled that out, I realized it was facing sideways. Its right side was facing me and was walking away. It took about 2-3 steps and just vanished. And I'm standing there. I'm like, oh, hey, what's this? So I stood there for a minute. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take this as mine. It's time to go inside and go to bed. So that's what I did. I went inside. I didn't necessarily go to bed right away, but I went inside.
Well, you know what, Jeffrey, that actually reminds me a whole lot of my own shadow people experience, in that it seemed like they were just kind of in a different place than me. Like a different, I mean, the word dimension is kind of funny, but that's just the best way I can describe it. But it was just kind of like I watched them for a few seconds. They were in another place. They didn't interact with me. It's like they didn't even know I was there. If they did, they didn't care. But that reminds me a whole lot of mine.
I have a feeling you were going to mention that, which makes sense. Now, I told this story to a few people. One person mentioned that may be your guardian angel. And that stuck out to me because, well, I thought to myself, well, maybe she's right, because I was outside. I lived in the country. We were in the city. Been a subdivision type area, the second place, which is where this happened. But still, we're outside. We're in the woods. We're in the country. Now, remember also, I said I was walking barefoot. Maybe I was about to step on something I shouldn't have, like a danger noodle, aka a snake. I know for a fact there were copperheads out there because I killed one. This was sometime a couple years after this happened, but still, I know there were snakes out there. Copperheads, as you probably know, are very venomous. Now, I'm going out on a leap here, but maybe I was about to step on something I shouldn't have. And it was trying to warn me, hey, dude, I'm like, I know you may like to walk outside, but maybe you might want to step inside tonight, sort of thing. But other than that, that's the only thing I can think of. I can't think of any other reason, unless trying to scare me, that something like that would appear, which I think if it was trying to scare me, it would have done a lot more than that.
Yep, that's exactly how I feel about mine. I'm like, if they wanted to scare me, they could have looked over and done some hand gestures or something and interact. Because if there was some interaction there, it would have taken the experience to a whole nother level. I mean, it was weird to begin with, obviously. Very out of place. I knew these weren't people. But, I mean, your explanation is as good as any, right? I mean, what if there was something there that you were about to step on barefoot?
That's my thing, exactly, because honestly, I mean, that would pose a danger, obviously, even if this thing wasn't venomous, but of course, out there, like I said, there were copperheads. Infection can happen, all sorts of things can happen. So, obviously, don't want to step on anything that could bite you, that could put you in a world of hurt. So, if there's any good reason to want to warn someone, hey, you might not want to walk outside tonight, that'd be a good reason.
Absolutely.
Now, I want to say this kind of pretty much ties up my paranormal, at least in terms of entities, ghosts. I won't say I've had anything major like that. Nothing spiritual, paranormal in nature. But then I have to move on to next the I guess cryptid category. I didn't see it, but if you've probably heard it, the Ohio Howl. I've heard. Now I will admit I did hear it previously before this happened, because I've always, like I've said before, I've been into this all my life. I've read books about UFOs, Bigfoot, ghosts, you name it. I've always been interested, even as a kid. You may even know this old TV show, Sightings.
Mm-hmm.
I watched that show a lot. I mean, a lot. I miss that show. But
there was so much good TV back then. It's so different now.
Well, tell me about it. Not to mention, people get so sensitive about certain things.
God, yeah.
Like, calm down.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be honest about this. The Ohio Howl, they call it the Ohio Howl. I'm pretty sure you know what I'm talking about. There was a program I was watching that displayed the Ohio Howl call. I'm mentioning that because maybe someone recorded it and was trying to play a prank on a friend or something. Not me, but say a friend out there. I mean, maybe that's what was happening. But I was walking around. I think it was about nighttime. It's funny how a lot of this does happen at night, which is odd. But I want to say it was around 7, not too long after daylight left. And I'm sitting on the porch. I hear a loud howl, similar to the Ohio Howl. And being that I've heard it before, I'm like, could that be what I think it might be? And I've heard it, I think, 2 times, but then it stopped. I didn't hear it again. Like I said, could that have been someone recorded that and wanted to play a prank on a friend? That's possible, yes. But I heard it. I can only talk about what I heard and speculate. I didn't see what made it. But could it have been a Bigfoot? Possibly.
Now, did you look up online or ever hear of any reports in your area?
Not at the time. I didn't look online because unless I was at school or at a friend's house that had internet, they didn't have internet. We didn't have internet. We were lucky if we had DirecTV satellite.
Well, since then, though, have you looked it up to see if maybe there was some activity around that time?
I'm not going to lie, I haven't thought of that, but that may be a good thing to look into later.
Yeah, I would help you with that.
But I know there have been reports in Texas, that I do know.
100%.
I know you probably know of this. I'm a big fan of Sasquatch Chronicles. When one guy told about when he was working for an ambulance company, when a group of those attacked him and the other guy in the ambulance who was working with him. I know it's not necessarily related to this, because I wasn't there. But again, there are experiences in Texas, people do report them. So if you know where the closest city to us, if you know where Houston, Texas is,
mm-hmm.
We are probably roughly about an hour or 2 from there. That's where College Station is. Again, that's where I'm at now. And I'm not living too far away from where a lot of these experiences happen. So I want to say we're probably not too far from reports. So, and again, also in the country, could something have been out there? Yeah, because it was like a subdivision, but it was definitely a wooded area still.
Oh, yeah.
So something like that could move through there as long as it was careful and avoided the places where people probably would have saw it, which again, like related to Bigfoot specifically, I have some theories as what it could be. I mean, if we could talk about it if you don't mind or want to, but again, I want to kind of stick in the topics first and go through my stories. But I wouldn't, like I said, I wouldn't mind talking about my theories of all that stuff.
No, I mean we're already on Bigfoot. You may as well. I would like to hear your theories.
I mean, my theory is why it's so intelligent, why it's able to stop to avoid us. I think it may be part human. If you've ever heard, and I've discussed this with another person, have you ever heard of a girl named Emily Fleur? I've talked about, I've messaged her back and forth, my theories. She suspects it may be part human too. I can't remember what species of early human she said her theory was, but I don't have a specific set, like if it's a Neanderthal, if it's what, it's this, it's that. I just believe it's part human. This may also explain why we haven't found any dead ones. Because one customary, which you know as well as I do, we bury our dead. We just don't leave them sitting out. So that may be why we haven't found anything. And also, this may explain why it's so intelligent. But also, maybe it may also explain why the scientific community doesn't want to touch the subject in large. There are some that will, but a lot of them won't. And I've had this theory, like something that was said. When I saw a video of like an actual chimpanzee, it was walking on two legs. It had been trained to walk. And how so many people thought that was repulsive and chilling. And I got to thinking about that. Why would that disturb people so much? I mean, yeah, that's that, but there's a phenomenon. I can't remember what it was called, but it's like something that's close to us, but not us. It scares us. And then I was hearing someone else talk about the subject of obviously Bigfoot, that if it was proven to be, especially part human, that we may have to redefine what being human means. And something clicked in my head. And I kind of formulated a theory that let's say Bigfoot was proven true and exists, but it's also part human. The idea that we may have to redefine what being human means, maybe that scares some people or makes some people uncomfortable. And maybe that's why the scientific community doesn't want to touch the subject, because it makes them so uncomfortable of having to possibly do that, to redefine what being human means. That's a potential theory that I've had, at least why they don't dive into it like they, in my opinion, they should. Because there's so many eyewitness reports. There's so much, yeah, it's circumstantial evidence, but it's stuff that's very compelling. Very compelling. Some of it more than others.
Yeah, I mean, if no matter what, if they came out and said there's a huge bipedal ape creature running around the woods, or there's a huge bipedal ape / human or human sub whatever category you want to call it running around out there, either way, that is going to upend things big time. Of course, if it is part human, no matter how much of a part it is, I would say the upending would be greater than the ape theory.
Agree with. Now, kind of like a somewhat related to it. You've heard of Missing 401, right? David Quietus.
Oh yeah.
I knew I was going to have to mention at some point. Oh, I have theories about what that could be as well. With it being especially part human, that means, and many eyewitnesses report that if they see it from a distance, they just think, "Oh, this is an animal." But a lot of the people up close, I'm pretty sure you've heard these reports. When they see it up close, and I've heard of reports of people seeing it, it's not even 6 feet away from them. They're that close. This thing does not seem like an animal. It seems like it's thinking in a way that only we can. So if it is part human, that would explain why it's able to do that. And I agree with what you said. That would turn up the issue or the issues to another level. Because let's say someone shot one. Well, could that be considered murder? Well, yes, maybe it could be, depending on the circumstances. Even in general, if you shoot an animal for no reason, you're probably going to be roasted on the 6 o'clock news. But let's say this is something that's human and you shoot it for no reason, that could lead to a homicide charge. And to preference, you probably heard of him. His name is Justin Smeha. I may not be getting his last name right, where he claims to have shot a Bigfoot. I'm kind of in the air where they actually did. Again, it kind of puts the preference. If you shoot it for no good reason, that could lead to a murder charge if it's proven human, potentially. Now, if it's a self-defense scenario, you'd probably be all right because you're defending yourself. You're protecting your cattle, you're protecting your home, you're protecting your kids, you're protecting yourself. I mean, yeah, I can understand you shooting it. But if it's just minding its own business, that don't make no sense to me.
Yeah, that would get hairy real quick, pun intended, right? Well, yeah, Jeffrey, what other experiences do you have?
This is the last one that someone involves me. It didn't happen to me, but it happened to my brother. Now, as to what could have been doing this, I have a theory about what that was. But I'm going to be honest. He was listening to a lot of the podcasts that I was. I'm going to say it's not impossible. Maybe that influence, maybe, but like influenced him in some way. But again, I'll get to what I was in the house. He was outside. And he comes to the door and says, "Hey, did you call for me?" I'm like, "No, dude, I didn't call for you. I was listening to music or maybe watching YouTube video on my phone, but I was doing something where I wasn't talking." And then he goes, "Are you sure?" I'm like, "Dude, you would have known if I called for you because I would tell you. I would tell you outright if I was calling for you." He said, "Dude, I swear up and down, I heard you call for me." I'm like, "Are you sure that it was me?" He goes, "Yes." And I don't think he would lie to me. I really don't think he would lie to me because I don't think he was lying at this time, but especially because the look on his sound in his voice, and then I got up and I looked at his face. He was serious, like legitimately serious. So I don't think he was imagining it, or at least playing games with me. So I went outside and I looked around. I didn't see anything, but that doesn't mean there couldn't have been something out there that was mimicking me. Now, as to what that could have been, I know you probably heard of this creature, the Wendigo. Let's see, I think we're roughly in that area where they could be. Probably not too far away. It could have been a ghost, could have been something else. I mean, who knows? But he swears up and down he heard me call his name. But I know for a fact I did not call his name. So if it wasn't me, what was it?
Well, I mean, considering the fact that you brought up Bigfoot, possible Ohio howl situation a couple of times out at and is this the same property that we've been talking about?
No, but it's not too far from it. I want to say about a mile away.
Oh, that's pretty much the same property, right? So if you're talking about Bigfoot, especially, I mean, Bigfoot has been known to make certain sounds and possibly lure people into the woods, or I mean, if you're into that kind of a thing where they're looking to maybe do some nefarious things, or maybe in some cases it's for good reasons. But I've heard of the whole mimic situation before. But some people think that once you start looking at doppelgangers and mimics, that gets into some really dark stuff as far as like the D word, demonic. But also, but just to in my mind, since we're talking Bigfoot, that's where my mind goes. Maybe it was a Bigfoot mimicking you. Now, how often would you actually holler out the door for your brother out into the if he's working on something in the yard, or if he's out on the porch? Is that something that you would do quite often, is holler for your brother?
I wouldn't say I do it often. I mean, we both had our cell phones on us, and normally I would just call him, and I would just say loud, just loud enough to maybe be heard from the living room, because I was in my room and he was in the living room. That's about as loud as I would get. If I got really loud, it's because if he didn't answer my phone, but I would go to the door. But that didn't happen very often, especially at night. We both stayed inside for the most part at night, because the place we were at, it wasn't the best place to stay. I mean, it was our property at the time. We had no utilities, though. We had a jumbled up solar system that he threw together. He was kind of a MacGyver, and he knew what he was doing to a certain extent. So we stayed inside. We charged car batteries from a solar panel. So we weren't going to be outside very often unless we had flashlights or a phone. But still, we'd have to charge that. So again, we try not to be outside very often.
Well, it just makes me wonder because maybe you executed that call enough to where whatever could mimic it ended up being able to do it.
Now that you may be onto something there, and that's a possibility. Now, again, I mentioned the Wendigo. I know I'm not saying it was a Wendigo, but something like that may only have to hear you one time. Maybe it heard me several times. Again, I don't know. Yes, and I know Bigfoot are heard to at least mimic dogs, the sound of a dog bark. Now, I never heard them mimicking the sound of a human voice, but if they can speak like us, maybe they could. I mean, if they have the ability of infrasound, which I think you probably heard of that possibility. If they can do that, maybe they can mimic our voices, at least to an extent.
Right.
Now whether they get it exactly like us, exactly how we would sound, that I'm kind of iffy on. And he said this sounded exactly like me, as if I spoke it out of my own mouth, my own voice. Now, people who talk about if they hear that maybe it's a Bigfoot, it sounds almost like they're dog barking, but it's a little off. Like it's a bit off. It's not quite exactly, but it's close. And I've heard where the clip of it was by coyotes, I believe. You could tell what was clearly coyotes, and then you hear this one thing that sounds almost like a coyote, but it's a little off. They believe this was a possible Bigfoot. So it's not that they couldn't mimic voices to an extent, but if they can do a coyote, but it be a little off, I think for a human, even though they mimic us close enough, it'll be a little off too. He didn't say it sounded weird or if I had a cold or something, and I didn't have a cold at the time. I was fully well, not sick, nothing. He said this sounded exactly like me. It did not sound like I had a cold. It did not sound like it was off. If I understood him correctly, this sounded exactly like me, exactly how I would sound right now as I'm speaking. So again, it's not to say it couldn't have been a Bigfoot, but the reports I've heard of them mimicking things, it gets close, but it's not quite there. It's a little off. But that's not to say they couldn't mimic us exactly, but I just know of the reports I've heard. But again, maybe they can, and we just haven't heard it yet.
Yeah, maybe it was just close enough for him to go, oh, what was that, Jeffrey, or was that not? I mean, yeah, even on my episode 300, played a ton of audio clips, but Donna and Greg out of Washington State and David of the Olympic Project came on with me because he was the one out there with the guys of the Olympic Project, Shane and Derek, and they were helping her out with all of the activity on her property. And they would actually call the dogs Layla, Bridget, and the Bigfoot, would call in their tones, trying to get the dogs, presumably, to go out into the woods to them, which is super creepy. But they have recordings of that. Layla, Bridget. It was in the exact cadence that they would call those dogs. Now, it wouldn't sound exactly Bridget. It would sound a little off, but we know that sometimes, at least in some cases, Bigfoot and dogs don't mix very well.
Yeah, I've heard some stories, believe me. Now, that's a possibility. It could have been a Bigfoot, but the second place we were, there was like maybe, I should have mentioned this, there was like one tree, maybe two trees on the property. So unless it stayed near those trees or in houses in between there, it would have been kind of hard to hide.
Mm.
And something that big, walking around there was plenty of stuff to bump into. Because it was there was stuff all over the place, let's just say that. Yeah, you would knock something down, you would bump into something. We for sure would have heard something. But if it's something that's smaller or more nimble, it can move through that territory. Now, where we were. Now, That's not to say it wasn't far away enough to where it could call out and sound like us and stay hidden. That's a possibility. Again, I can only speculate what it was. But the reason I bring up Wendigo, because Wendigo is absolutely known to mimic voices. From the reports I've heard, stories I've heard. Is that the only thing it's known to do it? No. There are several things that are known to do it. Again, I can only speculate on what it could have been.
Well, yeah, cool story, but not, I mean, if it's the darker stuff, though, that's stuff that you definitely don't want to mess with, you know?
Yeah, definitely, especially with, say, one of the things I mentioned, that Skinwalker, Wendigo, that's Native American stuff. You're getting into some serious stuff.
Yeah. You'd rather stay off of their radar.
Serious.
Well, Jeffrey, any more experiences?
Now, this is more of a premonition type stuff, I guess you can say, or like Sixth Sense sort of thing. Now, I'm not claiming I'm a clairvoyant or anything like that. It's more of like something's happening, you can't put your finger on it until you found out something like major happened. There's two experiences where involved a death. Unfortunately, one of them happened when my brother passed. And the other one happened when I was walking. I was in a town. I was living in Huntsville at the time. I was actually working as a correctional officer at the time in Huntsville, Texas. Well, I'll kind of go to this story first. I was walking to the Walmart. I was having to walk through a parking lot. It was pitch black. It's dark. Sun's still out. And there were still, at least the area I was at, there were street lights parking in the parking lot, so I could see pretty well. Now, the area I was considering about to walk through first, it was very dark. But I'm like, I have a flashlight. I'll walk through there. So I'm walking through that area, or to go to that area to get to the Walmart, because I figure it'd be quicker. I get to a certain point. I'm not even in the dark yet. I'm still a good ways away, still plenty of street lamps, all that stuff. And it felt like I just hit a brick wall. Like I just walked into a brick wall. I'm like, okay, that's weird. So I go to step forward, to continue to walk. I still felt like that brick wall feeling. And then an odd feeling came over me, like, I may not want to walk this way. Almost as if I'm not going to say it was anything paranormal, like something was about to get me that way. But again, I'm in a town, I'm in a city. People can try and rob you, especially in a dark area, which is where I was heading to walk through. Maybe I was picking up on something that wasn't good. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to change my trajectory. So I did. So I stick to the areas where there's plenty of street lights, plenty of light. It didn't stop there, though, because this odd feeling as almost something was following me, or someone. I think it was more someone as opposed to something. I can't quite put my finger on it, but I felt like I was being followed. As to why I was being followed, I couldn't tell you. I didn't see anyone either, but if you stick back far enough away, you could probably follow someone and they won't see you. So with this feeling, it was getting stronger as I was getting closer to where I was trying to get to. Maybe it was trying to hurry up, and they were trying to hurry up and catch up to me. That's why, again, I mentioned the first experience, something like remotely like this. I had a knife on me, this time this way. I carry knives on me, that way I can defend myself, stuff like that. I'm a big proponent of self-defense ability. So Second Amendment type stuff. Not going to go any more further than that because I don't want to get political. But again, I'm a big believer in having the ability to defend yourself. So I had two pocket knives on me that were designed to be like kind of like a raptor claw. You open them, you can fight with them. So I opened one. I was getting ready to, if necessary, use it. And I announced to what I felt might have been there. Again, I think it was a person this time, an actual person. And I said, I can't remember exactly what I said, but I said something along the lines of, I am armed, I do have weapons, so you might want to think twice, buddy. But that feeling stuck around, but it almost like it didn't try, whoever it wasn't trying to get any closer. Because I did not hide the fact that I was holding something. I made it plainly known. I openly displayed what I had. Because obviously, a knife's not a gun, but you can still do some damage. Now, when I got to the road in between there, it wasn't a highway or anything, but there between there and the Walmart I was heading to, obviously it was getting close to where I was going, that feeling started to go away. And it fully went away when I got to the Walmart, like I wasn't being followed no more. As to what that could have been, maybe I was being paranoid. Yeah, that's a possibility. But then again, people do get jumped all the time. Bad things happen to people. Maybe I was picking up on something that a lot of people don't seem to listen to their intuition. As one person said, it's the ability to sense danger. Either you have it or you don't. I don't think it's necessarily a sense that you don't have it. It's just a lot of people don't listen to it when they should. Well, I've learned to listen to it. When I have these odd feelings, like something that's just not going to go right today, it's going to be a crappy day, and I don't listen to it and say, go to work. Yeah, it's a crappy day. Way more than normal. Other times I just go to work. I don't have a bad feeling. The occasional stuff that happens. Nothing too major, nothing really annoying. This was more serious, though. So obviously that would explain why the feeling was much stronger. Now, the second experience, this happened, I can't remember how old I was. This was long before this one. I didn't want to go to school, and my mom was like, well, why do you only want to school? And my mom, I don't know why. I just get a feeling something bad has happened. I kept telling her that. So it goes on for a little bit. I want to say roughly about 30 minutes to an hour later after we have the exchange, she gets a phone call. And then it's silent, like you could have heard a pin drop. And she hung up. I just knew something was off. I just didn't know what. So I asked her, hey, Mom, what's wrong? And she goes, your grandpa just died. Passed away. Now, the third one, this is when my brother was in the hospital before he passed. Now, to start off, he went in the first day or so, 3 at the most, he was fine. Then something happened where he was having trouble breathing. They put him on a ventilator. He was on a ventilator for a little over 3 weeks. And this was when he passed. I want to say it might have been right around midnight on the 14th of October. Because I was asleep. I woke up, it was a little after midnight. I don't know exactly what time it was. I just know it was after midnight. I just saw the 12 o'clock. I didn't look at the last numbers. And I had this odd feeling that something was wrong. I didn't know what yet. And then I get a call from the hospital telling me that, hey, it's about your brother. His heart failed and he gave out. We're trying to bring him back. Do you want us to continue life-saving efforts? So, of course, like, duh, I told him, yes, please. Try and save my brother. So the nurse had to let me go. She had to go back in there and help. And I'm sitting there like pins and needles sort of thing, hoping it went well, but it wasn't to be. Because she called me back not too long after and like, well, we're sorry. We tried to get his heart started again, but we couldn't do it. So I said, so you're telling me my brother is no longer with us? And she goes, unfortunately, sir, he has passed on. And I'm like, I had to sit there for a second, compose myself. I said, thank you, ma'am, for at least letting me know. And I thank y'all for trying to get him back. And she said, I'm sorry for your loss. I get off the phone and then I start making a bunch of phone calls. Obviously, there's a lot of people who need to know this. But what sticks with me is that odd feeling that something was wrong. And I think it only happens to me when it's something that's a little more serious. Obviously, a death would be serious. Significant danger would be serious. Something that could be at least a significant problem. Don't have to be danger per se, but it's like whenever something like that happens is when I get the feeling. Now, you might be able to call that premonition of some form, sixth sense. Definitely, I would say it's a sixth sense of some type. Now, as to why I got those feelings, I don't know. But again, my theory is I think everyone has the ability to at least sense danger on that way in some level. It's just maybe some people don't choose to use it. Now, I could be wrong that only certain people can do it. Again, I just know for me, when it's really serious thing, I get a strong feeling something's wrong, whatever it may be. I may not know what it is yet. I just know something's off. And I think a lot of people get those feelings and they don't listen to them, and it comes back to bite them in the butt.
Right.
You
Absolutely.
can probably relate.
Well, yeah, thank you so much for sharing those stories, Jeffrey, especially that last one. I'm really sorry about your brother. I appreciate you hopping on after a long day of work.
Thanks.